I was sitting on the edge of the couch, phone in hand, the kind of quiet that makes every small sound feel louder. My apartment was dark, save for the pale glow of the streetlight slipping through the blinds. Outside, a car door slammed, and for a split second, I thought someone was here. But it was just the city doing its usual background noise. My chest was tight, though, not from the city, but from the realization that had been creeping up on me for weeks, maybe months. Something wasn't right. I'd thought we were fine. She and I, our life together, the jokes, the little routines. I could picture our Saturday mornings perfectly, coffee brewing, sunlight hitting the kitchen counter just right. Her laughing at something silly I said. But now, sitting alone, replaying those mornings in my head, every smile felt like a mask. Something under it had always been there, and I'd just missed it. Or maybe I'd refused to see it, then it hit me, hard. Everyone around me, friends, family, even people I barely knew, seemed to know. Not in the obvious way, like gossiping, but in those little half-smiles, those tiny pauses in conversation when my name came up. I'd laughed it off, told myself I was imagining things. But sitting here in the dark, the truth whispered between the gaps, I was the last person to realize something important. And the scarier part? I didn't even know what it was yet. When I look back, it's easy to see why I felt safe. Our life together had this rhythm that made the world outside feel manageable. Saturday mornings were always the same, the hum of the coffee machine, the scent of something baking, her leaning against the counter with that lazy half-smile that made me feel like I was the only person in the room. I'd watch her brush her hair behind her ear, laugh at some random comment, and think, yeah, this is it. This is home. Friends came over often. Game nights, casual dinners, movie marathons where no one actually watched the movie. Everyone seemed to mesh effortlessly. Her and my friends, they laughed at the same jokes I did, chimed in with shared references I didn't fully get. But I didn't mind. I trusted them. I trusted her. It felt like a bubble, one I could live in forever. Even family visits felt warm. My parents would glance at her, nod with that subtle approval that felt like a seal of legitimacy. She would squeeze my hand during dinner, whisper something private in my ear, and I'd smile like a fool. I told myself this was real, that the comfort, the laughter, the ease of it all was proof enough, but now, replaying those moments in my head, the little details start to stick out. That glance she'd exchanged with my friend Sam, just for a second, quick, fleeting, nothing I would have noticed if I weren't overthinking. Or my sister asking me, almost offhand. You two always that close? In a tone that seemed almost knowing. I laughed then, thinking I was being paranoid. But sitting here tonight, alone, I realized those small cues weren't random. It's terrifying how easy it is to believe in an illusion when everyone around you plays along. I thought I was in control. I thought I could trust what I saw, what I felt. But maybe trust isn't about what you see, maybe it's about what everyone else refuses to tell you. And that thought. It makes the silence in this apartment feel unbearable. It started with the little things. At first, I didn't even notice. A text notification flashing on her phone that she'd quickly swipe away when I walked by. A laugh that felt a fraction too delayed, like she'd just remembered something she wasn't supposed to. I told myself I was being ridiculous, that I was imagining patterns where none existed. There was the time we went to a friend's birthday party, and she drifted into conversation with Claire, my coworker. I could see them leaning in close, speaking in low voices that I couldn't catch. My stomach twisted when Claire glanced in my direction with a quick, knowing smile, but I laughed it off. Probably talking about work, I said to myself. I even joked about it later with her, and she laughed, tossing her hair back like nothing had happened. I believed her. I wanted to, even at home, small inconsistencies piled up. Some nights she would go out for a walk or to grab something from the store and return later than expected. Sometimes she'd be quiet for long stretches on her phone. I'd glance over, catch her expression frozen just before she smiled at whatever was on the screen. I convinced myself it was nothing, maybe a work email, maybe just scrolling mindlessly. I didn't let my mind go further. But the strangest thing was how easily I rationalized all of it. My friends, when we talked later, didn't mention anything. They can't see inside her phone, I told myself. My parents? They always treated her like family, smiling at her jokes, nodding at the same small things I noticed. Even my own doubts felt selfish, like I was the one creating tension where none existed. The worst part was that ignoring it felt normal. I wanted to trust her. I needed to trust her. And yet, every time she laughed at something I didn't hear, every time she shot a glance at someone in the room and quickly looked away, it sank into me. Not enough to act on, not enough to ask, but enough to make me wonder if I was the only one in the dark. Sitting there, I realized I had been collecting little signals, tiny shards of a larger picture, and turning them into dust before they could form anything real. And the more I ignored them, the more invisible I became, even in my own life. I remember the night I finally decided to say something, to put words to the gnawing feeling in my chest. I met up with Jake at our usual corner cafe, the one with the flickering neon sign that buzzed faintly in the dark. I stirred my coffee slowly, pretending to be casual, while my mind raced through the incidents I'd been ignoring. I don't know, I said finally, voice quieter than I expected. It's probably nothing, but I can't shake the feeling that something's off. With her. And maybe with everyone around me too. Jake nodded, leaning back in his chair. He took a sip of his own drink and stared into the dark foam as if reading a secret. Then he said, "Huh. That's weird." "Yeah." I pressed. "Do you think I'm overreacting?" He shrugged, but it wasn't casual. It was the kind of shrug that hangs a little too long, like he's weighing whether to say more. "Maybe," he said finally. "I mean, sometimes people just have things they don't share. Doesn't mean it's about you." I laughed nervously, but there was a flicker, something in his eyes, the way he avoided mine for a second, the pause before he spoke. A flicker I couldn't place. "So, nothing?" I asked. "Nothing you need to worry about," he said, a little too quickly, his words clipped. Then he changed the subject, asking about work, about my weekend. But I could feel it in the silence between his questions, the corners of my own unease curling tighter, like smoke finding cracks. I left that night with a hollow feeling, a tiny seed planted that maybe my instincts weren't just paranoia. But I also had this growing, sinking thought: if Jake knew more than he was saying, why wouldn't he just tell me? Why the hesitation? The laughter? The half-smiles from our friends in the past few months suddenly seemed heavier, like there were stories I wasn't part of. By the time I got home, I had a headache from overthinking every glance, every word, every pause from the people I thought I could trust. And as I turned the key in the door and walked into the apartment, I realized that maybe this wasn't just about her. Maybe I'd been blind to a whole network of quiet truths, all around me, and I had no idea how deep it went. It started small. A text she said she didn't send, an explanation that didn't quite add up. A story about running into an old friend that seemed a little too rehearsed. At the time, I shrugged it off. Everyone tells little lies sometimes, right? But lying, even in small ways, leaves a residue, a whisper of doubt that sticks to the air. And I could feel it settling around us, even when she smiled and laughed like nothing had happened. One evening, I noticed her phone buzzing on the counter while she was in the shower. A name flashed across the screen, one I hadn't seen before. Instinctively, I looked away, telling myself it wasn't my business. But then the vibration stopped. And she returned, her hair damp and smelling faintly of shampoo, smiling at me like nothing had shifted. I didn't mention it. I couldn't. I wasn't ready to admit the suspicion, even to myself. Then there was the night she said she was working late. I believed her, trusted her. But a mutual friend, casually dropping a comment about seeing her around town, made my stomach twist. I tried to connect the dots, but every time I did, I hit a wall of rationalization. Maybe it was nothing, I told myself. Maybe I'm reading too much into it. Even our conversations began to feel staged. Questions about my day, laughter at my jokes, compliments, they were there, but I couldn't shake the sense of rehearsal. The intimacy that used to feel effortless now had edges, tiny ones I couldn't ignore. I felt a shift inside me, a subtle erosion of trust, but it was quiet, like water wearing down stone. I started noticing patterns, half-truths, minor evasions, pauses that lasted just a little too long. Each one alone was easy to dismiss. Taken together, though, they formed a shadow I couldn't see clearly. I didn't know what it meant yet. And the worst part was how much I wanted to believe her version of events, to cling to the comfort of normalcy. By the time I went to bed that night, I felt a strange mix of guilt and unease. Was I imagining it all? Was I being paranoid? Or was the truth simply hiding, waiting for me to finally notice? I closed my eyes, trying to block the unease, but even in sleep, the small inconsistencies whispered. And I knew, somewhere deep down, that I couldn't ignore them forever. I thought I finally had an answer. It came out of nowhere, in the quiet of an ordinary evening, when she sat across from me at the kitchen table, arms folded, staring at her coffee like she was about to confess something monumental. My heart thumped, half afraid, half desperate. "I know you've been worried," she said softly, almost hesitating. "And okay, there's something I should tell you." I leaned forward, gripping the edge of the table without realizing it. Every instinct in me screamed that this was it, the truth I'd been circling for months. She took a deep breath and explained. Apparently, some of the weird glances, the late nights, the evasive behavior. It was all tied to a surprise she'd been planning for me. A big career opportunity, something she'd been keeping secret until it was ready. That explained the odd messages, the mysterious outings, even the little white lies. I remember laughing nervously, relief flooding through me. Relief, yes, but also shame. How could I have doubted her? The pieces seemed to fit. My mind replayed the months of tension and discomfort, and suddenly, everything seemed logical. The half-smiles from friends, the strange pauses in conversation, maybe they'd been helping her keep it under wraps, supporting the surprise in their own quiet way. For the first time in weeks, I felt a flicker of trust again. I wanted to believe it so badly that I ignored the small lingering doubts, the tiny inconsistencies that still scratched at the edges of my mind. I smiled at her, maybe a little too tightly, and told her I understood. She smiled back, a real one this time, and the apartment felt lighter, warmer. For the moment, the storm inside me seemed to calm, and yet, in the back of my mind, a faint whisper persisted. Some things still didn't add up. A glance here, a tone there, a name I hadn't heard before. But I pushed it down. It's nothing. I was just overthinking. That's what I told myself. That's what I wanted to believe. Because believing the false truth felt easier than facing the suspicion that had been growing quietly in my chest for months. As I went to bed that night, I felt almost normal again. Almost. But there was a tiny edge to the comfort, a sense that maybe, just maybe, not everything had been said. For a while, I believed it. I clung to the explanation she'd given me, replaying it in my head like a mantra. It was just the surprise. Everything makes sense now. I even laughed at the memories of the nights I'd felt uneasy, convinced I'd been imagining things. Relief felt good, almost too good, and I wanted to let it carry me, but the doubts didn't stay buried for long. It started with small things again. A comment from my sister, something offhand about how everyone seemed so eager for it to happen, made me pause. The words didn't fit the story I'd been told. Then Jake sent a group message, joking in a way that didn't make sense if it was all just a surprise. It was subtle. Almost nothing, but the timing, the tone, it twisted in my chest, and her friends. I noticed the way they looked at me differently, just for a moment, before laughing at something trivial. A quick glance shared, eyes flicking away as if they'd been caught. I tried to convince myself it was coincidence, that I was seeing patterns again. But the feeling in my stomach, that quiet hum of unease, told me otherwise. Something was off. Even at home, I started noticing the gestures I'd once ignored. The way her hand would hover over the phone for a second too long, the subtle tensing of her shoulders when I asked innocent questions, the way she avoided certain topics with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. All small, almost invisible. But they accumulated, and each one was a whisper I couldn't dismiss. I tried to push it down, to tell myself it was paranoia, that I was imagining all of it. But the more I ignored the signals, the more they grew louder in my mind. The quiet background of life, the clink of coffee cups, the soft laughter from friends, even the hum of my apartment, started to feel like a chorus of secrets. All pointing at me. And for the first time in weeks, I felt alone, truly isolated, inside a life that seemed perfectly normal to everyone else. I went to bed that night staring at the ceiling, wondering if I'd been right to trust the explanation, or if the cracks I'd ignored were starting to widen. I didn't know yet. But the uneasy feeling in my chest told me one thing: whatever was hidden, it wasn't done revealing itself. I never meant to find out. Honestly, it was an accident, the kind that makes your stomach drop before your brain even processes it. I was helping her with something in the living room, moving boxes around while she rummaged in the closet. One slipped under the couch, and when I reached for it, my hand brushed against a small, folded envelope I hadn't seen before. Curiosity overtook me. I unfolded it. And instantly, my chest tightened. The handwriting was hers, the words familiar, but the content. Not what I expected. Dates, names, brief references, things that didn't match the story she told me. It wasn't everything, just fragments, but enough to make my mind race, enough to make me feel like the last person to see the obvious. I set the envelope down as she walked back into the room, smiling, unaware. I didn't say a word. I could feel my hands trembling, and the silence between us suddenly felt heavier than air. I tried to act normal, but my mind refused to cooperate. Every laugh, every casual glance I'd dismissed in the past months now twisted into meaning I couldn't ignore. Later that night, I replayed the fragments in my head, trying to piece together a coherent picture. Some of it aligned with the surprise explanation, but there were gaps, moments that made no sense, mentions of people who should have been irrelevant. And the more I thought, the more I realized, everyone around me, the friends, the family, co-workers, they'd probably seen this before I did. They'd known, quietly, while I stayed in the dark. I didn't confront her yet. I couldn't. Not that night. I just sat on the couch, staring at the envelope, the weight of isolation pressing down like a hand on my chest. Every familiar sound in the apartment felt different, the hum of the fridge, the distant traffic, even her quiet breathing, as if I was hearing a life I wasn't meant to be part of, and in that moment, humiliation started to creep in. Not just at her deception, but at the thought that I had been the fool in my own life. That everyone else had known what I hadn't, and no one had told me. Not my friends, not my family. Not a single person. The envelope sat there, untouched, taunting me. And for the first time, I felt the creeping, terrifying certainty: the truth wasn't just hidden. It was deliberately kept from me. I couldn't sleep that night. The envelope sat on the counter, mocking me, and I realized I had to confront her, or at least try. I wasn't sure what I expected: denial, tears, maybe an explanation. Anything to make sense of the dissonance clawing at me. I waited until she returned from a late errand. Her hair was slightly damp, her jacket wrinkled from the chill outside. She smiled when she saw me, casual, unaware. I swallowed the lump in my throat and said, quietly, "Can we talk now?" Her smile faltered just a fraction, like the first crack in glass. She nodded and followed me into the bedroom. I held the envelope in my hand, the paper crumpling slightly against my palm. "I found this," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "I don't understand. You told me it was just about the surprise. So what is this?" She hesitated, biting her lip, then gave a vague laugh. "It's complicated," she said. "You don't need to worry about it. I was trying to protect you." "Protect me?" I repeated, disbelief thick in my voice. "Protect me from what?" "From knowing that everyone else might have already known. From knowing that I've been blind this whole time." My hands shook, the envelope trembling like the doubt inside me. She tried to reassure me, but the words felt rehearsed, like they had been practiced in front of a mirror. My mind raced, every small inconsistency, every evasive glance from the past months, every cryptic comment from friends, it all connected. I felt the walls of the room close in, suffocating. I needed answers, so I asked about my friends, my family. Her reaction was subtle, a pause too long, a slight frown, an almost imperceptible tightening of her jaw. Nothing concrete, but enough. Enough to make me realize that the envelope was just the tip of the iceberg, and what I had thought was the full story. Wasn't. By the end of the conversation, I had more questions than answers. And the weight in my chest felt unbearable. I was starting to understand something terrifying. It wasn't just her. It was everyone around me. The people I trusted. The ones I counted on. They'd all known, and I hadn't. That night, I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, the shadows stretching across the walls like silent witnesses. And the thought that kept looping in my mind, cold and heavy, was this: how do you confront someone when the betrayal isn't just theirs, but everyone else's too? It hit me like a punch I didn't see coming. I found the rest of the truth the next morning, not through a confrontation, but through a careless slip, a text left open on a laptop I had no right to touch, a voice message accidentally overheard, tiny fragments of conversations I wasn't supposed to hear. And in that instant, the whole picture snapped into place. It wasn't just a surprise anymore. It was months of lies, half-truths, carefully orchestrated stories, and a web of silence that everyone around me had been part of. Friends, family, co-workers, they had known what was really going on. Every vague comment, every paused glance, every smirk I thought was harmless. It had been a signal. And I had been blind. The envelope, the half-lies, the subtle evasions, they were just breadcrumbs. The real truth was that she had been involved with someone else, someone close, while I was being lulled into this comfortable illusion. And everyone knew. Everyone. Not one person had thought to tell me. They all acted as if ignorance was easier, as if protecting me meant letting me stay in the dark. I sat on the edge of the bed, shaking, staring at the laptop screen, every familiar face in my life suddenly feeling alien. Anger, humiliation, grief, they collided inside me, a storm I couldn't name. I thought I had been loved, trusted, understood. And now I realized that I had been the last to know about a betrayal that had been quietly acknowledged by all the people I relied on. The silence in the apartment was suffocating. Every little sound, the hum of the fridge, the distant traffic, even her soft breathing, felt like a reminder that my world had shifted without me noticing. I wanted to scream, to demand answers, to lash out at everyone at once. But I didn't. I couldn't. I was too shocked, too humiliated, too aware that my anger might fall on the wrong people, and the cruelest part was understanding why no one had told me. They all thought it would be easier for me to stay unaware, to preserve the illusion of normalcy. But the result wasn't peace. It was isolation. I had been the only one blind in a room full of witnesses, and the weight of that realization pressed down like lead. I didn't know how to move forward. I didn't know if I wanted to. The betrayal wasn't just hers anymore, it was collective. And in that moment, I realized the deepest wound wasn't just heartbreak. It was knowing that everyone I trusted had let me be the last to understand. The days that followed felt unreal, like I was moving through someone else's life. I didn't speak to her right away, didn't confront friends or family. I couldn't. Every time I tried to form words, my throat tightened, and all I could feel was the raw weight of being the last to know. The betrayal was everywhere I looked, in every familiar face, in every routine I had once trusted. I started noticing the smallest things: my mother's hesitation when I asked casual questions, my best friend's carefully measured words, the subtle avoidance in conversations. Everything that had felt normal before now carried a hidden meaning, like I had stepped into a world of silent conspiracies I hadn't realized existed. And the isolation was crushing. I felt like an outsider in my own life, like everyone else had been quietly complicit while I was the fool in the middle. Sleep became a battlefield. I'd wake in the middle of the night, heart pounding, replaying conversations in my head, questioning my own judgment. Did I ignore the signs too long? Did I push them away with my own insecurities? Guilt started creeping in alongside anger and humiliation. I wanted to lash out, to demand honesty, but I didn't know where to start, or if it would even matter. Even seeing her again felt surreal. She was distant but not cold, careful with her words, as if she knew I had discovered everything but wasn't ready to confront it. And I couldn't decide if I wanted answers or if I just wanted to disappear from it all. The comfort of familiarity had been replaced by a strange, heavy tension, and every smile felt like a test I wasn't prepared to take, and yet, amid the chaos, a part of me still tried to rationalize. Maybe they all thought they were helping. Maybe I had missed signs that were obvious to everyone else. Maybe I had been too trusting, too naive. But those explanations didn't soothe the sting of isolation, didn't undo the months of being the last to know. The fool everyone else had silently watched, I started questioning everything, my judgment, my trust, even my own ability to read people. And the most painful question of all lingered in the back of my mind, gnawing quietly: could I ever look at any of them the same way again? Or was I forever trapped in the realization that everyone I relied on had let me be blind, willingly or not? I still don't know how to move forward. Some days, I think about confronting everyone, asking why they stayed silent, why they let me live in ignorance while they all knew. Other days, I wonder if I even want answers, or if it's safer to retreat into my own life, pretending nothing happened. The strange part is how much this has changed the way I see the world. Every laugh, every glance, every small gesture now carries a shadow of doubt. I catch myself analyzing people I've known for years, trying to decipher their intentions, searching for signs I once ignored. And it's exhausting. I feel like I've aged in months, burdened by knowledge I wasn't ready for, and by the sense that trust isn't something freely given, it's a fragile agreement that can be broken silently. Collectively, sometimes, I replay the early days with her, the moments I loved without reservation. And I ask myself, did my trust make me naive, or was their silence the real betrayal? Was I wrong to assume the best, to believe in comfort and routine, or was I simply blind to how people behave when secrets grow too heavy to share? I wonder if anyone else has felt this, being the last to know, watching a life you thought was yours unravel silently around you. And I realize there may be no answers, only the gnawing question of whether I'll ever see people the same way again. Whether I can rebuild trust, or if some truths are too heavy to carry. Some nights, I sit on the couch, staring at the glow of my phone or the flicker of a streetlight through the blinds, and I can almost hear the quiet laughter of the people who knew, the conversations I never caught, the world that went on while I stayed in the dark. And I ask myself, again and again, was I wrong to trust? Or were they wrong to let me be the last to know? And the most haunting part is that I may never get an answer.